Okay. Tzaraim Tovim, Erev Tov in Israel. Dr. Beni, now I think I got it right. Part 17, Gematria Tov. Ki Tov. So it's tough to learn Sefer Tehillim, part 17. A pleasure. Welcome back, and Vakasha.
Thank you. Tov Lodot Lashem is our Mizmor. To everybody. We have the pleasure to talk today about Mizmor 92. And the focus of the Mizmor is, focus of the, are you recording?
Mm-hmm. It is being recorded. You see in the top left corner. If you ever don't see that there, as a co-host, by the way, just to let you know, I'm sorry for this little thing. As a co-host, if it ever goes off, which it almost never does, but if it ever does, a co-host has the ability to hit the record button and to restart the recording. So
okay, so the lecture today is focusing on Mizmor 92. And we want to look at specifically at the text of Mizmor Tzadibet, but we want to go higher and we want to take it from there to the broader context. Mizmor has a clear, wonderful, outstanding structure in the questionnaire, and thanks for everybody who participated. In the questionnaire, somebody requested to understand more poetry and the beauty of biblical poetry. I think today is quite a fascinating example how beautiful this Mizmor is structured. I want to show the flow of 90 to 94 as a response to 89. And we presented that in the past. I would like to look at it now again, because it gives a new perspective with new insights. I try to repeat issues always with a new aspect, not only to refresh the memory, I want to show something new. Mizmor 92 is a super example for contextuality and intertextuality, and I want to suggest a new approach of a commentary, a biblical commentary, not that we explain the Bible, but the Bible explains its own text, self-evidence from the text, and I think the example today from Mizmor 92 to show the contextuality and intertextuality is just a master example for that. A lot of people mentioned in their questionnaires that they're interested to learn more about the Siddur. Here we go. Mizmor 92 has actually a statement at the beginning, Mizmor Shir Le'Yom HaShabbat. It's a chapter for Shabbat. This is mentioned the earliest time, not only in the Mizmor, it's also mentioned in the Mishnah. The Mishnah in Masechet Tamid says on Shabbat they would say a psalm, a song for the Shabbat day, 92. And it says in our text, a song for the future to come, for the day that will be a Shabbat and rest for everlasting life. Yom Shekulo Shabbat L'Chayei Olamim. How interesting that in the Septuagint, the translation, the Greek translation, in the Mishnah, 7 different Mizmorim are chosen for every day. The Pasuk mentions only for Shabbat. However, the Mishnah mentions 6 other Mizmorim for Sunday, Monday through Friday. Interesting enough that those Mizmorim mentioned in the Mishnah are mentioned in the translation Septuaginta for all these Mizmorim, not yet in the biblical text. So here we have a very interesting transition, Bible, Siddur, Mishnah, a very, very early source. If we look at the source of the Mishnah in the manuscript by Kaufman, David Kaufman from Budapest, who found this very, very reliable manuscript, we see something very important. B'Shabbat hayu omarim mizmor shir leyom HaShabbat, mizmor shir le'atid lavo, la'olam shekulo Shabbat. That's a song for the future, for the world, which we will hopefully see soon. The entire world will be Shabbat and peace forever. So that is another understanding. We're not talking about the Shabbat as a day, Shabbos, we are talking about a new chapter in history. So by explaining this insight, we can also follow to later generations, and it actually goes back to the Shulchan Aruch, 500 years plus ago, when Rabbi Yosef Karo clearly made a clear point in his Shulchan Aruch that if we say Friday night, Mizmor Shir Yom Shabbat, it is Keilu, as if we have accepted the holy status of Shabbat, and we are not allowed to do any melacha anymore. It's not Borchu with Ma'ariv, it is Mizmor Shir Yom Shabbat. How do we know that we say Mizmor Yom Shabbat? One of his neighbors, one of his friends, his brother-in-law, Rabbi Moshe Cordoviero, together with Rabbi Shlomo Al-Kabetz, established Kabbalat Shabbat. At the same time when Kabbalat Shabbat was established, with Lecha Dodi and all the Mizmorim, which we will see today, one of them, and next week's Shiur more, only Mizmor Shir Yom Shabbat gained at the time of the Kabbalah in Tzfat, the status, halachical status. This Mizmor is an acceptance of the holiness of the Shabbat lahalacha. So that's a very interesting transition from the text in the Bible accepted by the Kabbalah, and later on the full text of Kabbalat Shabbat, not only chapter 92, and slowly we had a Kabbalat Shabbat, which we say today in most communities, basically all communities, Friday night. We have here a fascinating example of Siddur and the Tanakh. How did the Tanakh, how did it come in? And this question mentioned by several people in the questionnaire is of great interest to me. I started actually personally my website on Tefillah almost 20 years ago, and I got extremely attracted by Tehillim 8 years later. And I went for a long journey on Tehillim, still working on the Tefillah website, but you will find material on my website, which you see here, on the website here. And hopefully next week, when we will address and discuss 92 to 100, which is Kabbalat Shabbat, Lechuna Ranana Lashem, I will spend a few minutes to understand the Siddur. The focus of these series is Tehillim, so I have to stick very clearly to Tehillim, but there is a lot to say, and it's a fascinating field. It was actually the place, these Mizmorim we are presenting today and next week are actually the Mizmorim, which brought me to think about Tehillim and to detect for me the approach of the Heksheriut, the context. So let me go back to this overview, which we discussed last week, and which will help us to map where we stand. We spoke last week that the fourth book has three structures, which you see here. We saw last week, lecture 16, the very beginning. Moshe is back. David in 89 is gone. He died, Kivyachol. He's not around anymore. It's the end of the first temple period. And in 89, when he's gone, and there's like a eulogy at the end, Moshe he steps in, and he takes over back to the Torah, back to the understanding and to the belief system of the Torah with Moshe. And there is like a mental restoration back to the belief. And we will see that very clearly in the text. Today we talk about, in lecture 17, about Tzadibet. Next week about these 6 Mizmorim, Kabbalat Shabbat. And we should follow afterwards on 102 and the 3 Shiurim, the 3 Mizmorim at the end, and at the beginning, just the transition from the book. It's very interesting that at the end of the 3rd book, we talk about the destruction of King David's state, of his kingdom. When we begin the Mizmor, the 5th book, Mizmor 107, it's the beginning, the return. And we will see there beautiful connections between these 2 Mizmorim, which we will address later. But interesting, if that is the destruction of the temple, here is the return back to Eretz Yisrael. What happened in between? In between, there are reflections, considerations, how to build ourselves mentally to get back mentally to the belief that Am Yisrael is going back. That is, in my opinion, not only a beautiful text, it is a great psychological insight how to rebuild the belief system, which was so hard attacked and suppressed. I want to show you now 3 different approaches with the format. I work on a lot of graphics, and sometimes I have 1 format, 2 formats, and even 3. And I will show you now different formats. I do think it's important. They come from different times when I worked at that, on the material. And it shows different aspects, which I think every aspect has something we can learn and have better insights. This structure, the 5 books, which we used very often, showed the transition. The 3rd book is the darkness. And what happened at the time of King David, book 1 and 2, was destroyed, 17 Mizmorim down. In the 3rd book, 17 Mizmorim up in the 4th book. And here is a recovery, back to life, back to the belief system. And we have Mizmorim, which are connected here from the end of the 2nd book and the 4th book. King David is back. And we have a lot of psukim, which I will not repeat, which cross this border and this tunnel, this black tunnel, the destruction, and afterwards it continues. These are very meaningful analogies. What we remember from the past, we will continue. It's not a total destruction. It is a dark, it is a night, but afterwards we wake up. We remember that at the end of the 2nd book, and that is relevant for our shiur today, at the end of the 2nd book, King David was praying for his son's kingdom, Shlomo. Elohim, li Shlomo Elohim mishpatecha lemelech ten, v'tzidkatcha leven melech. And he said, at the time when King Shlomo will be successful, every tzaddik will thrive, he will blossom. Yifrach b'yamav tzaddik. When is that going to happen? The 3rd book tells the destruction. It gets very dark. Nothing happens here. It happens in chapter 92. In chapter 92, it says, Tzaddik katamar yifrach. The righteous person will blossom, will thrive like a palm tree. The word tzaddik yifrach only at the end of the 2nd book and at the beginning of the 4th book, not at the very beginning, chapter 92. That means whatever the expectations and the hope was for King David, for his son Shlomo, it didn't really happen, but it will happen when people come back to Eretz Yisrael after the destruction. And we have more examples like that, which I'm not going to repeat now. I choose here other ones. That is another format which focuses not on the entire book like this one. It focuses on the analogies of the 3rd book, which we elaborated, Asaf. We had here the other Mizmorim of Beni Korach. And I want to show here that the 4th book uses words, and that's a very busy slide with words. If you print that out and look up all the psukim, you will hopefully learn a lot. That's the way I learn. And I want to show you here again the example of Tzaddik katamar yifrach here, and another example. At the beginning of the 3rd book, when Asaf was describing the destruction, we spoke about the contradictory continuity. The enemies are wild. Am Yisrael is suffering. The poet says, Ki hinei rechukecha yovedu. Those who are far from you, who are distant from you, they will not survive. The word Ki hinei yovedu comes back in chapter 92. Ki hinei oivecha Hashem, ki hinei oivecha yovedu. We will look at that again later. So we see here a lot of details on this summary, less the big picture of the entire book, but a lot of analogies which you can repeat and learn over and over from looking at that. And this Mizmor is still an important one. This format, it's actually the format I learned in my Tanakh. Here is the text scanned, and I put them in my own text. I put circles and rings, and that's the way I discovered this approach, which was afterwards I saw elaborated by a lot of researchers, and I can further research it on my own. with electronic system and by reading it over and over. But here we have another aspect which shows something very important. Rabbi Avraham ben Ezra says that there was a scholar, Chacham Tzaddik, who couldn't take it to read this Mizmor. Vaya besfarat Chacham Gadol v'chasid, v'zeh ha-Mizmor haya alav kashet, v'lo haya koreh oto. And he couldn't hear it. Here we have the text. We touch the text, and we have here beautiful texts, examples, which clearly tell us how beautiful the kingdom of David is. Please take a look at Chesed ve'emunah. Chesed ve'emunah, the first word. Chasdei Adonai olam ashira. Ledor vador odia emunatacha befi. Ki amarti olam chesed yibane. Shamayim tachin emunatcha bahem. The time of King David, there is a lot of love from Hashem, and you can trust him. And King David, he will be ve'emunati ve'chasdi imo. Always I will be with him, God promises. Uvishmi tarum karno, his horn will be arise, and he will have oil on his horn. That's the Shemen Kochim Meshachtiv, Mashiach, the oil. He is the symbol of everlasting kingdom. V'chasdi lo afir me'imo, v'lo ashaker be'emunati, and I will not disappoint him. So look at here, Chesed ve'emunah, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And it appears again in the next Mizmor. After the black line, it says, how terrible, God, you disappointed, you didn't keep your promise, you killed us all. And at the end, it gets very tough. In the Mizmor here, at the end, he gets very tough. And he tells Hashem, Ayecha sadecha rishonim Adonai nishbata leDavid be'emunatecha. Where is your love? Where is your charity for King David? You promised, you swore it to King David. Where is your emunah? Where is your chesed? And he is broken. And he says at the end, the terrible words, Zechor Adonai cherpat avadecha, your slaves, they were killed. Asher cherfu oivecha Adonai. And your enemies came and they desecrated the values of the Mashiach. It's all gone. Baruch Adonai L'olam Amen V'Amen. That's the destruction. And now look, in this format, what you can see here, I think that is like coming back to the data. Forget about my tables, about my graphics, about my arrows. Here you see the text. You can touch the text. Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat. What happens afterwards? Sorry, we should start here. And please look at my clip arts. Moshe comes back and he says, David is gone. David is a representative of kingdom. The king has to keep his Sefer Torah. Yes, the king is gone. His Sefer Torah is still around. And Moshe prays the way he prays in the Tanakh. And he says, remember your avadim. Who are these avadecha? Who are the slaves here, avadecha? These are the avadecha here. And here are the avadecha at the end of 89. He talks about 89. He is recovering, responding to 89. In the doxology, it says, Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen. There is no me'olam ve'ad olam. Moshe says, me'olam ad olam, ata'el, you're a king forever. And he prays, Sab'einu baboker chazdecha. You should bring us a lot of love every morning, every new time should be a period for a new chapter full of love. Sab'einu baboker chazdecha. Look at these 3 words. Sab'einu asbi'echa, asbi'ehu. And in Mizmor 92, lahagit baboker chazdecha. He says in 92, lahagit baboker chazdecha ve'emunatcha balelot. So in this format, you see it in the text. Nobody has to tell you. I'm not going to tell you about analogy and statistics. You see it. You can touch it. Pray it in this sequence. And so this format, I think, is very, very helpful to read the text, write the original data of the text. And what is he saying? He says here in the middle, look here. Here are your enemies, Hashem. Your enemies, they are gone. Why is he mentioning, here are your enemies? The enemies are not here anymore. They're gone. If they are gone, why do you say here they are? They are not here anymore. We will address that issue in a moment. But remember, Oivecha Hashem appears in Tehillim twice. Don't go far away to find for the other place. It's just above here. The enemies in 89, they killed us and destroyed it and deleted all the traces of a Mashiach. That's the last word of 89. And now he says, your enemy, Hashem, they are gone. Remember them. It's like a narrative exposure to the trauma. And we will address that later as a technique of post-traumatic stress syndrome. If you see it, you are exposed again, not necessarily to cross 10 times the bridge, but you talk about the bridge. It's a narrative exposure, a classical technique of psychology. These enemies, Oivecha Hashem, they killed and destroyed us. It's a trauma. Look here, there are the enemies. They are gone. That's another statement. It's like a perush for 92 to better understand. We see them, but they are gone. And I want to show that in 91, at the end, Hashem talks to us. I cannot elaborate that Hashem talks to us, but it's an extremely meaningful place. Hashem says, oh, I talk to you, ki yadashmi. You know my name, you know to call me. And in the next Mizmor, it says, Tov lehodot l'Adonai u'lezamer l'shimcha elyon. It's great that we can talk to you again, Hashem. We can talk about your chesed and your emunah. You see how he is recovering. And what is he saying? He says, you lifted up my horn, and there is oil on my horn, fresh oil. That's a statement which we remember from here. Oil on the horn. It says here, Tarim Karnenu. David HaMelech, he has oil on his horn because he is the king. Uvishmi Tarum Karno. And here we have it again. Now I'm King David. King David is gone. Moshe recovered me. Everybody is King David. Welcome everybody on the Zoom. You are all King David. You are all the successors, the follower of King David. I wish to congratulate you for this outstanding title. Nothing better you can expect. We continue his legacy. It's not gone. Moshe says, yes, he died. Avadecha, they're gone. And Oivecha Hashem killed them. But our spirit continues based on Moshe Rabbeinu 90. We survived the 9th and we bring a new date with Mizmor Shir Leyom HaShabbat. Back to the nature, back to the creation of Am Yisrael and to the belief in Hashem. The story goes on, and all these analogies, I cannot explain them, but I want you to take one take-home message. And I want in particular to address those who are not familiar or not comfortable to read the Hebrew text. I know it's hard to read Hebrew text. Forget about the Hebrew text. Just remember, you see here 30 boxes. And all the boxes here are connected to the text in 89. That's the take-home message. V'chol idach zilug mo. All the rest are details. Whatever we experience here at the recovery is a response. So I want to tell to Rabbi Avraham ben Ezra, which is a major insight. Yes, it's hard to read it. But if you know that the crisis is deep and tough and difficult, be aware, the deeper the crisis, the more powerful and meaningful the recovery. If there is a deep crisis, as bad as it is and difficult to survive and difficult to cope with that, but if you are capable to move on, you are rebuilt. You are on a much higher place. After having experienced the 89, you can come to a very high level. And in the beginning of chapter 40, these Mizmorim take us to a very high level. It's not only that we have now Shabbat and I can rest in chapter 92. In chapter 93, we describe the sea, the nature. God is around. It says here, we are in his bait, in his home. Your entire world is your home. And what is he saying? Look at the beautiful example at the bottom of the page. In Mizmor 92, we said a foolish man will never understand that. Only we as a tzaddik. Yeah, I understand the statement. It says, happy me, I survived. Everybody else failed. Good for me. But that is the statement in 92. Good for me, I can rest. I came to the place, I experienced a Shabbat experience. That is good for 92. But afterwards it says in 94, a very clear pasuk. Binu bo'arim ba'am uchesilim matai taskilu. And he goes and teaches others. And he says, this world, there is a lot of violation of justice. There is a lot to be improved. We have to do tikkun ha'olam. Look my picture here on the tikkun ha'olam. Take the world in your hands and make it a better place to live. It's not the Shabbat that I'm inside and enjoying my Shabbat at home. You go out and improve the world. The same words of green here, Ba'ar, Yodea, Ksil, Yavin, Lo Yavin, you see them here again. Lo Yavin, Binu, Ba'ar, Ksil. There is a clear intention. I think this example is, this page and the following pages you will see, was for me one of the first discoveries of the Parshanut Sharit. No need, I think, to explain it further. So this format has something very special in it to show that in a beautiful way. I have more formats to show the flow which we saw here of these 5 Mizmorim. Moshe is back. The night we survived the night and are protected. We have a Shabbat. Nature is stable, 93, and we go and improve the world. I tried to summarize that in different formats here, and it's translated here. Sorry, you have the Hebrew version. So you can look up here. The beauty, King David is destroyed, but the prayer takes us back, and we start a new chapter. We start a new book. We start a new era of Beit Sheni, the Second Temple period, and it is the Shabbat. It is the Shabbat that brings us to rest, to relax, not Yom Shekulo Shabbat, Olam Shekulo Shabbat. It is a new chapter, as Ktavia Koishman says, the world is new. We look at the world in a new way. And it has a new message to the world, and we have a job. We have to improve the world. If you read these 5 Mizmorim, 90 to 94, the first unit of the 4th book, together, after having read 89, and remember the Ibn Ezra, he was stuck in 89. Read it together, fast, no break in between. You will see it goes down and it takes you up. And I think that is the beauty, the bibliotherapy of Tehillim, which is a very tough turning point, but done very, very beautifully. That is the message, how it flows. The best way to see it further is to go and read and to enjoy. Now, interesting enough, I cannot elaborate that. I have a lot to, I think, to explain on how is it chosen for Shabbat, for Friday, Shir Shel Yom. 92 is for Shabbat, 93 is for Friday, and we have 94 for another day in the week. I cannot elaborate it here, but there is a lot of very interesting insight. We stick to the Tanakh and not to the Siddur. As much as I'm interested to talk about it, it's not the time that we can talk about it now. What I wish to do now is to take a look inside chapter Mizmor Shir Leyom HaShabbat. We go now to an atmosphere of Shabbat. So in order to do that, let me put the proper background. You see, we have an atmosphere of everything is relaxed. Shabbat. We have nerot, lights. In the darkness are lights. We have the wine and we have the chalot. And I ate my chulant before I started the shiur. I'm really relaxed for a Shabbat atmosphere. It's not the way it was in other Mizmorim destruction. And I want now to read it. The translations are here, the short summary. Whoever can read these summaries will enjoy it. 3 masterpieces by Professor Meir Weiss, Yaakov Bazak, and Nachum Sarna. Wonderful, wonderful analysis pieces on chapter 92, which I try to incorporate in my analysis later. Let's read the Mizmor and analyze the text. מזמור שיר ליום השבת. טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון. להגיד בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך בלילות. עלי עשור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון בכינור. כי שימחתני אדוני בפועליך, במעשה ידיך ארנן. מה גדלו מעשיך אדוני, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. איש בער לא ידע, וכסיל לא יבין את זאת. בפרוח רשעים כמו עשב, ויציצו כל פועלי אוון. להישמדם עדי עד. ואתה מרום לעולם אדוני. כי הנה אויביך אדוני, כי הנה אויביך יאבדו, יתפרדו כל פועלי אוון. ותרם תרעם קרני, בלותי בשמן רענן. ותבית עיני בשורי, בקמים עלי מרעים תשמענה אוזני. צדיק כתמר לפרח, כארז בלבנון יסגה. שתולים בבית אדוני, בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו. עוד ינובון בשיבה, דשנים ורעננים יהיו. להגיד כי ישר אדוני צורי, ולא עוולה תבוא. We have a clear structure. The structure, as I summarize here at the beginning, it's the joy of the poet about the creation, and he also enjoys it that he is saved in the middle. The rescue of the poet from the hands of the evildoers. And in the middle, not only he is rescued, but being rescued, he realizes that somebody rescued him. Ve'ata marom leolam Hashem. Only verse 9 has 4 words. The one before has 3 units, 3 pieces of 4 words, and the one afterwards as well. He is surrounded by the po'alei aven, the evildoers, but it doesn't matter. He is with Hashem. Hashem is exalted, high, v'ata marom, and Hashem, who is marom, v'tarem kirem karni. You lifted me up, you raised me to your place. It's hard to translate in the same word, but you see the beauty in Hebrew. And at the end, the prayer is that he will be with all the righteous in the temple, and he will talk something very special. Let's look now at the Mizmor a little bit closer with the Hebrew text. And here, a masterpiece of poetry. Some of that is mentioned by Sarna, and some elaborated by Yaakov Bazak. In the middle, we have the 4 words. There are the axes. Before, we have 7 psukim, 52 words, and 3 times the name of Hashem. In the middle, 1 time the name of Hashem. Afterwards, 7 psukim, 52 words, and 3 times the name of Hashem. A total, complete, accurate symmetry. The words Mizmor Shir Leyom HaShabbat are the title, not included. What is that telling us? Talking about Shabbat, 7 days, we don't need we don't have to be creative to find a connection to 7. It's the week. Do you want to say 52 according to the solar system? 52 weeks might be. It is a clear system. I'm happy to think about Hashem, to thank him, and pay attention. Your name is high, Elyon. Elyon is a word which is mentioned both in 90 and 91. You are there, Hashem. You're helping us up there. At the end, we are not with Elyon as a name for Hashem. We are bechatzrot Eloheinu. We are in your home. We are back home. Eloheinu is another term for Hashem, and Elyon is one. We experience Hashem up high, but we are experiencing at the end of the Mizmor, we are back home, babayit, with him, in Beit Eloheinu. So that is a beautiful structure, which is top poetry, biblical poetry. At the beginning, we say it's great to express Hashem's name. And at the end, we say exactly the same. Lahagit baboker chazdecha, and at the end, lahagit, to declare that the Lord is right. And at the beginning is the same. We experience his chesed, but we will continue to do so once we are in the Beit HaMikdash. A very beautiful beginning and end of the Mizmor. Bifroach Reshaim kemo Esav. The evildoers, they're successful. Pricha, they blossom. No, it's only like grass. The grass is limited time. That's what we spoke about in chapter 90. But only evildoers are Esav. Others have a long-standing future. Why? It says at the end, Tzadik katamar yifrach. A palm can even survive in the desert with little water, and he will blossom, he will thrive. What's the difference between Pasuk 13 and 14? Pasuk 13 talks about the tzaddik in a singular way. He independently on his own is like a palm. Afterwards it says he is planted in the home of Hashem, in the chatzrot and the entries of the chatzrot Eloheinu Yafrichu, and it's Lashon Rabim. But please pay attention, there is a huge difference between Yifrach and Yafrichu. Yifrach means I blossom. Yafrichu is Hifil. It's not only that many, it's a plural. It's not Yifrichu, it is Yafrichu. If a lot of people are together, everybody can thrive and blossom. But he causes also others to be stimulated and to be motivated to enhance the power and the energy of everybody else. That is the difference between Yifrach Lashon Yachid, Yafrichu in the plural, Yifrach in Kal, and Yafrichu in Hifil. That's the opportunity for me to thank everybody for the questionnaires, because the questionnaires gives us the opportunity that we hear back what you understand, what you like, what you wish to improve. And I wish that everybody can be on his own a Yifrach, and for others a Yafrichu. It's extremely helpful to have your insights. Pay attention, please, that for the Rasha, which are mentioned here, you caused me simcha, joy in the creation of your world before Alecha. But there are evildoers, Poalei Aven, who destroy the world. They violate the idea of Poalecha Hashem. So it's connected on a contradictory level. The Yitpardu Poalei Aven, what is their punishment? Yes, they are successful in verse 8, very shortly. Why? Yitpardu kol poalei aven. They will be disconnected. Not punished, just disconnected. The tzaddik, if he is a yifrach, he will be in Beit Hashem with others, and he will stimulate others and be stimulated by others. They come together. But the reshaim, they will just be short-living, and they will be yitpardu, they will be disconnected. That's basically what the Mishnah, a beautiful Mishnah in Masechet Sanhedrin says, Pizur l'rashaim hana'a lahem v'hana'a la'olam, kinus l'tzadikim hana'a lahem v'hana'a la'olam. We have to work together if we want to enhance the positive forces, and we have to learn to disconnect the negative forces. So that's a very, very beautiful statement. You see at the end that tzaddik, the reshaim are gone, Poalei Aven Yitpardu, but the tzaddik, he is at home in the Beit Hashem, and he keeps singing forever. We spoke about Marom, Hashem, you're up high, but you also lift us up. Vatarem kirem karni baloti b'shemen ranan, in fresh oil. It's not only the fresh oil which is on my head, like a king, like King David. It is also that we will be fresh, we will be refreshed, Deshenim v'ra'ananim yihiyu, because we are inspired by the shemen ra'anan of the Mashiach that keeps us running for the future and to stay young and dynamic. So we spoke about Elyon and Eloheinu at the end. That is the masterful structure of the Mizmor. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I have two slides which I cannot show you. They are too busy. I will get bad criticism. So I just show you what I can't show you. That's the way I look at these mizmorim. We have 3 analogies from the intertextuality, and we have 20 analogies from the contextuality. That's a killer. I cannot show that to you. You agree with me? So when I finished this lecture, I woke up 2 o'clock in the morning and decided I can't do that. So I created a new slide, which hopefully will give you now a new experience. Now we are Mizmor Tzadibet. We see the whole Mizmor, and I will repeat the Mizmor. I will read it over, and I want to show you the commentary. The commentary is red, contextuality, green, intertextuality. The blue highlighted word, the highlighted words in blue, white and blue, I will elaborate them later in a deeper level. And I say the Mizmor again. Shabbat. What is Shabbat? Shabbat has in the Bible a lot of meanings. Before we go to intertextuality and contextuality, everybody knows that Shabbat is the idea of creation, Breshit Perek Bet, Exodus from Egypt, Sinai, Har Sinai, and the temple, special laws in the Shabbat, Parshat Vayekel, Shmot 35. So if I say it's a song for Shabbat, we know exactly what we can anticipate. We are back to the way the Creator wanted to his creation to look like and his creatures to operate. Shabbat. Olam shekulo Shabbat. We can say that every day in the week. Of course, the Shabbat has the idea, halachically the 7th day, but that's an idea which is so dominant for the 4th book. And now I look at the text. And here, a miracle. I couldn't find that in the commentators, and I have a lot of German commentators. I checked it, I read it, and I searched in my search system. Tov lehodot laHashem. The word lehodot laHashem appears in the entire Bible, lehodot laHashem, to thank Hashem, only 3 times. And I just presented to you, it's obvious why. You don't need my explanations, you know it. It says it in our Mizmor, it's good to be one of the people who does lehodot laHashem. Who in the Bible performed the action of lehodot laHashem? It's only King David when he came to the temple, when he brought the ark to the temple, and later on it's only Shlomo when he built the Mikdash. You see it here enlarged. Only these 2 places in the entire Bible, from Bereshit to Divrei Hayamim. It's only David, and he was singing, and he has musics, he has instruments, and he mentioned the name of Hashem, and of course Asaph was with him. And after his death, it was Shlomo, and he said everything in the style of King David, and he was one, B'chlei Shir Asher Asa David HaMelech, Lehodot LaHashem. So that's exactly the only analogy. Do we need an explanation for that? I don't think so. If we say Tov Lehodot LaHashem, it means it's good to be a partner of the 2 other figures in the Bible who did Lehodot LaHashem. David, King David, and Shlomo. Those who built the temple. I will also be in the temple later on in 92 in Pasuk 14. That is a beautiful, beautiful intertextuality. If we know the Bible by heart, it's not difficult to find it. At the end of the Mizmor, it's a full quotation of Moshe in Dvarim 32, a full quotation. And later on, we have here a quotation from Shoftim, Ki hinei oivecha Hashem, ki hinei oivecha yovedu. And the intertextuality with Shoftim says it very clearly. At the Song of Dvorah, when she was so successful at the victory, she says, Ken yovdu kol oivecha Hashem. And Dvorah was one of the highlights of the period before the destruction of the temple. So quoting her is a very good success. We are back at the time of Dvorah. Oivecha yovedu, Oivecha Hashem yovedu. 3 times it's mentioned in the Bible. But even more than that, it takes us to another place here. Oivecha Hashem, and therefore I put it in green and red. Oivecha Hashem, the pasuk in Tehillim, has a full quotation of these psukim, which we know from other places. It should all be in red. My apologies here. Where is that? That is a classical example of post-traumatic stress disorder and the narrative exposure therapy. Talk about your enemies. In chapter 73, Ki hinei rechakecha yovedu. In chapters 83, Ki hinei oivecha yehem mayun, umesanecha nas'u rosh, al amacha yarimu sod, and they said, final solution. In chapter 89, it says, Asher cherfu oivecha Hashem. Now chapter 92, totally relaxed, Shabbat, no war, no enemy, no danger. Vata marom leolam Hashem. We remember these enemies, Hashem. Here they are, and they are gone, and they are separated. That is, in my opinion, a master example for narrative exposure therapy for the post-traumatic stress syndrome. And we have other beautiful examples, which I will show you about Chasdei Hashem up here. And it's full. I know the slide is full, but you see this Mizmor on Shabbat, the mind is relaxed. The memories are very active, very, very well connected. If we say, Lagid baboker chasdecha ve'emunatcha balelot, I can sin again, and I can say a positive word for Hashem in the morning, your kindness and your faithfulness at night. I couldn't do that in 89. I couldn't do that in 88. I was a broken man. My belief system was destroyed. I will continue to do that after Shabbat in chapter 98, and in chapter 100, we'll talk about it next week. And you see a lot of analogies with chapter 90, which I cannot elaborate here. It's full. I want to show here, and that is we will talk about that at a later stage. Chapter 100 is a relecture, a re-experience, a déjà vu of chapter 92. If chapter 92 talks about my experience, having survived the disaster and coming back to Hashem on a personal level, chapter 100 will take it to a universal level. We'll talk about that in Yirtzeh Hashem next week. The idea of Tov lehodot l'Hashem chasdo is the basis of the statement Hodu l'Hashem ki tov ki le'olam chasdo, which will dictate afterwards the book of Tehillim. So we spoke about the other analogies here, and here the important comparison, which I tried to repeat it here on this sheet. We are continuing what King David said. His horn is uplifted and with oil because he is the king. He is gone in 89. My horn is again up with oil. I continue, King David. I'm not the king, but I'm the follower of David. If that's true for David, the same is true for Shlomo. The legacy of Shlomo given by King David is Yifrach b'yamav tzadik, and in Shabbat, Yifrach tzadik katamar Yifrach. These are beautiful connections. I can confirm you. I checked them statistically very carefully, and they appear only here. That's not, I think that's really a parshanut hamikra, that the Bible explains its own connections in the most wonderful, outstanding way. So let's go now to the word of chesed ve'emunah. They appear in chapter 92. We saw it before. And I brought here all mentions, all psukim of chesed ve'emunah, all of them. And you see, they appear in the first book, the third, and in the fourth book. In the first book, King David says, I sing with my kinor, nevel, and asol, with my musical instruments. They're mentioned together only here and only here. 92 takes us back to King David in his childhood in book 1. We sing for the creation. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, ki yashar dvar Hashem. That's what we say at the end of 92. Lahagit ki yashar Hashem. And we are in 33, he spoke about emunah v'chesed. That's what he does here. Chapter 92, King David at best. And afterwards, we have him at the end, this term, chesed ve'emunah, at the end of chapter of the 3rd book. Hayesupar b'kever chasdecha emunatcha ba'ovdom. Will your charity, your kindness, and your faith be declared when you are dead, when you are in the grave? No. Keep us alive, please. And we saw that chapter 89 is the crisis. We hoped for charity, kindness, and faith for King David, but it's gone. When we are back recovering, we can sing again, Your Chesed ve'emunah. We will sing Your Chesed ve'emunah, and the entire world will see it. In chapter 98, and all nations will come to the temple. Hariol Adonai kol haaretz, ki tov Adonai lo'olam chasdo, ve'ad dor vador emunato. Kindness and faith will be a topic again when we come to this place. And here to the end, a little bit of botanics. Erez Balvanon. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful mashal, an example for allegory for much more than a nice tree. We know from Shoftim that the Erez Balvanon is the strongest one in the story in Shoftim. King Shlomo prepared beautiful trees, the Erez from the Lebanon, and he brought them. That's the way he built it. And he was talking as his wisdom, that he could talk al haitzim min ha'erez asher balvanon, the most beautiful trees on earth. And he brought them to the temple. And in Yeshayahu, the people who are arrogant, who think they are the biggest one, the smartest one, the strongest one, they are arzei lavanon haramim. In Yeshayahu, in Yecheskel twice. In Tehillim Kaftet, we say, Vayeshaber Adonai et arzei halavanon. He will break, Hashem will break those who are arrogant. But the tzaddik and tzadibet, he will be uplifted and raised by Hashem, and he will be like a Erez Balvanon. He will be planted there. It's not the temple who is the Erez Balvanon. Yes, that's the building. It's not the power of the strong enemies who think they are the strongest one, Erez Balvanon. It is the poet who is back in the Mikdash. It is him in person who is Erez Balvanon, full of beauty, like described in Shir HaShirim, and as described again in Ezra, that they rebuilt the Mikdash, and they used Atzei Arazim min HaLevanon. So there is a whole story to Arzei HaLevanon in Mizmor 92, that it's much more than just to say he looks like a nice tree. There is a history to this allegory of Erez Balvanon. I summarized that we saw the story and the story of chapter 90 to 94, the first part of the 4th book. And we saw it's a response to 89. We saw that in different formats. We looked at the structure of 92, the structure and the messages. I tried to give some insight to 92 from the contextuality and the intertextuality. And I hope you can use that for future Shabbatot and years and learning and teaching. Or Mizmor Shir Leyom HaShabbat is just a wonderful opening for our experience of relaxation at Shabbat time. That's the idea of Shabbat. And it is a Mizmor which has so many messages which are deeply taken from Sefer Tehillim, the turning point in Sefer Tehillim. Every Shabbat should summarize the past and build the future, the way chapter 92 summarizes the previous Mizmorim and opens, as we will see in the next lecture, opens stages of the future. We look today at 92. In Yirtzeh Hashem next week, I'd like to ask you to look at 95 and 100. And please take also a look at the Mizmorim in between and 49. We will have a handout next week, which I thought I have it with me here. My apologies. The handout, you have to fold it, and it shows very clearly the places how to fold it, that you can see the chapter 95 and till 100. And the lower part, if you print it out next week, we can do it together. My apologies, I forgot to bring it. And I wish to thank you. And now it's time for questions and answers. Thanks for your attention. Susan?
Hi. Okay. So thank you so much for that lovely shiur relating to the Mizmorim of Shabbat. We have a couple of questions. Just give me one moment. One of the questions is, well, it's really a statement, because we really talked about the cure for post-traumatic stress disorder. And Carol says, with enemies gone, like in Shirat Hayam, that really relates as well to that theory of getting rid of PTSD. So that was just a connecting comment. Would you like to say anything about that? All right, now I don't hear you. You're on mute now.
Sorry, could you please say it again, Susan?
Sure. Carol mentioned the PTSD that you spoke about. So Shirat Hayam and leaving Mitzrayim is a very good example that ties in with that point.
So it's interesting. Beni Yaakov, the great commentator to Breshit and Shmot and other pieces, he says at the end of Shirat Hayam, we say Hashem Yimloch Leolam Va'ed. Please take a look at the next Mizmor after 92. It says Hashem Malach Geut Lavesh. And in the next chapters in 97 and 99 is Hashem Malach. The conclusion of the recovery is we accept God's kingdom. Exactly Shirat Hayam. And all these Mizmorim are dedicated to Moshe. No surprise. If Moshe is praying in chapter 90, if he is singing, if we are singing in Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat, who is the big singer in the Bible, in the Torah? Shirat Hayam. So Shirat Hayam concludes with Hashem Yimloch Leolam Va'ed. The following Mizmorim indeed elaborate the idea of God's kingdom. So that is a very, very good point, of course, which fits very well the flow. Thanks for this comment.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, so we have a number of comments regarding Leah when she says Apam Oded Hashem, and she named Yehuda, and why Jews are called Yehudim, and the relationship between David HaMelech and Yehuda. Obviously, he came from Yehuda. Can you elaborate on that point a little bit more?
So that's an interesting point. For in Megillat Esther, it says Asher Hogla. They came to the diaspora from Yehuda, because after the first destruction of the kingdom of Israel, we don't know where they are, the 10 tribes. Today might be we know a little bit more, but the galut of the Yehudim, they came from Eretz Yehuda, from the land and kingdom of Yehuda, where King David was his son later when the kingdom was split. These were the Yehudim. So that comes from there. There is a beautiful elaboration by Rav Hirsch and many others. Tov lehodot laHashem. It's good to thank Hashem. Of course, connecting it to lehodot Yehuda, a beautiful drash.
Oh, that's very nice. Thank you. Can you repeat the distinction from the beginning of the shiur regarding the Septuagint that you mentioned?
Yes. So I should have presented that in a nicer slide. We have a very, very clear flow. and in the research of Siddur, the liturgy, we have a wonderful example. I think we are together with Kriyat Shema at one of the earliest biblical sources of our Siddur. Shmona Esrei is not mentioned in the Tanakh. Shema, of course, is. Mizmor Shir Leyom HaShabbat is. Mizmor Shir Leyom HaShabbat is the title of the Mizmor, which is said according to the Mishnah for Shabbat. That is true. Where are all the other 6 Mizmorim which are mentioned in the Mishnah? They do not have the title. In the Septuagint, which was translated by 70 Jewish scholars, it says that all these other 6 Mizmorim, which do not have in the Hebrew text the date, the indication which date, it's mentioned that's for Sunday, that's for Monday, and the rest of the week. So we see here the transition of the Shabbat Mizmor, which is mentioned in the Bible, and the other Mizmorim. That is step 1 on the biblical level, / Septuaginta, the earliest translation of the Bible, / Mishnah. And afterwards, these Mizmorim, much, much later, were taken by the Kabbalah and elaborated by the Kabbalah as an opening for Shabbat. That was accepted by Rabbi Yosef Karo, the big authority of Halacha, Shulchan Aruch. Mizmor Shir Le'om HaShabbat, you say it, good Shabbos, it's enough. Once you said it, you accepted the status of Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, that's it. Oh, that's not true for the rest of Kabbalat Shabbat, which was established the same time in Tzfat. Obviously, Rabbi Yosef Karo was aware that if we take Kabbalat Shabbat as an idea to accept the Shabbat, the Gemara says in Shabbat Daf Kuf Yutet that we should go and accept the Shabbat, lekabule Shabta, be'erev Shabbat. The idea of to accept the Shabbat is fine. You do it with the Mizmor, that's fine. Not the entire Kabbalat Shabbat, which was done by his contemporary rabbis in Tzfat. He did not yet put the nail on this text of Kabbalat Shabbat as at a halachical status. Kabbalah Mizmor Shir Le'om HaShabbat, yes. We should see next week a little bit how these 6 Mizmorim, the second part of the Mizmor, how they beautifully, beautifully meet the idea of Lecha Dodi, the beautiful song. And I would like to connect that to the 3 Shlomos. One is Shlomo HaMelech and King David, of course. And one is Rabbi Shlomo Al-Kabetz. And the third Shlomo is Shlomo Karlebach, who has wonderful nigunim for that. So we see a wonderful flow, Mishlomo leShlomo leShlomo. And if you say that at the Kotel, where you can also talk about Suleiman, to add another Shlomo, not necessarily, but we see a beautiful flow. And I want to state, I will not elaborate that next week. I think that the Kabbalah had a very, very deep understanding of the contextual flow. Very, very deep. And I would like to hint at a little bit. Look at the Kabbalat Shabbat and at the Lecha Dodi. And a little bit I will show with you. I leave that for another shiur. I would like to show you now, Susan, allow me to show here, to share with me. That's the handout for next week. And it is it's a different format. You see how difficult it is to find a good format. What I want to show you with this format, if you can see it here, just a moment, please. You see it better without background. So that's the format of the handout. And it is like that, what you see on the screen. You have to fold it, the lower part, which is, you see a fine line here. You have to fold it like that. And you have to fold it here again. So it looks like that. And if you do so, you have 2 versions. You have one version like that of the text, which is for just the biblical text, 98, 100, and the other Mizmorim in between. And this way, if you fold that backwards, you have it. So I recommend, if you can print that out, use it for reading Kabbalat Shabbat and learning and preparing it. It's all in Hebrew here, but if you use that with the translation, you will see the analogies. Whatever we learned now, I think it will jump in your eye. You don't need my shiur next week. It's so evident.
Thank you so
Please.
much. There was, I shared also the link at the chat for this a handout, so you can download it. And there was one more question asking about Re'im. If you can elaborate on what are Re'im and why specifically that term was used.
Which Re'im?
Yes.
Oh, in the Mizmor of today, Mre'im.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a special explanation for that. I have to think it. I'm not prepared for that. Mireim, it says Mireim. I have to check that more carefully. I'm not ready right away to give a good answer. Let me write it down, and if I will see the name, I will try to address it if I find something interesting.
Excellent. Now we had the beautiful questionnaires that people answered. We so appreciate it, and we spent time reviewing it. And it really helped us a lot. If you'll permit me, I'll ask one question that we didn't get to last week. Does not relate to the Mizmorim we did today, but it is a question that someone asked relating to why the story between David and Goliath is not mentioned in Tehillim. Perhaps it's hinted to. So if you have some insight on that, it might be helpful.
Yes, it's a very good question, because if Sefer Tehillim is an elaboration of what we know from Shlomo, there is a lot that was told in Sefer Shmuel, Sefer Shmuel. There is a lot of history, and what we have in Tehillim is not necessarily reflecting one-to-one his history. So of course, the big success of the star, King David, is that he was successful to fight the big enemy, Goliath. That's the way he started his career. That's his success story. Not a word in Tehillim. And I think we discussed that when we spoke about Mizmor 18. In Mizmor 18, we have exactly one-on-one what we had in Shmuel Bet, chapter 22, with tiny differences. The Abrabanel explained, because King David wrote it, somebody wants to pray. So the Abrabanel gave us this insight that Tehillim has another intention, has another agenda. The agenda is very, very different when it comes to war and religious experience. In King David's story description in Shmuel, yes, he was a big fighter, had a story with Bathsheba, it is mentioned, and a lot of wars. And in Sefer Tehillim, the writer took the hero of King David and they wrote him up in the way which was meaningful for Sefer Tehillim at the Second Temple period. What is the meaning? Music, prayers, songs, deep religious experience, an openness for the world. Was King David really saying Al Narot Bavel? I don't want to answer, because the Orthodox approach says Beruach HaKodesh. I'm not arguing with that. But if he says that Beruach HaKodesh, and he is not defined as a prophet, so Ruach HaKodesh is an answer. If you can't explain it better, you say Ruach HaKodesh, and it works for everything. It doesn't say that is the Mizmor he said Beruach HaKodesh. We will come to 137. It is the experience of the Second Temple period when they came back from Babylon and rebuilt Eretz Yisrael. Shir HaMa'alot B'shuv Adonai Shivat Zion Hayinu Kecholmim. What the agenda is of Tehillim is the Second Temple period, rewriting King David as our hero, as our leader, as our role model. How do we want to rebuild it? The way King David did it in the First Temple period, we want to continue it. We will see in chapter 108, which is a pure summary, which very, very little changes. 108 is a summary of chapter 87, of chapter 57 and 60. I showed it in the presentation that it is the same as we had it before. But we have something very important there. I cannot show it here in details. It's not on my slideshow, but I showed it a little bit, just summarizing it. Oops. that these chapter 180, 108, sorry, is summarizing 57 and 60. But we have some differences here. One important difference is in chapter 57 and 60, it says, when did King David do that? That is not mentioned in 180 anymore. Why? Because for 180, the biographical historical background is not important anymore. It was for 57 and 60. I say the same, not only within the book, I say it also comparing it to Sefer Shmuel. The big fighter, the successful soldier, the hero against Goliath, that's not the person we want to see in Tehillim. We want to see the person with a deep religious sensitivity, with beautiful prayers, with longing, nostalgic longing for the holiness of the temple. That's another King David. Was that historically King David, yes or not? It doesn't bother me, because I say Tehillim the way Sefer Tehillim wants to be read, inspired by King David, but the new emphasis of his life. Therefore, Goliath really doesn't fit there. Who fits there is the king who talks about the future, the world, the vision, the messianic idea of King David, which was not necessarily King David, the messianic idea, a very strong king, but we take it to another level in Sefer Tehillim. So we have to learn to split it. Does it answer a little bit?
Very much. I found that answer very inspiring and really took us back to one of the first slides where you talked about waiting for Ha'olam Shekulo Shabbat, because that's what Tehillim is really about, and that really was very inspiring and direct. So thank you so much. I'm going to thank you in the name of everyone who's at the shiur, and thank everybody who was at the